Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Daiki Nakajima, Director of Business Development at Jetro New York. Thank you for joining this special session that we do with our J Connect program. These J Connect webinars are, we used to do a lot of these. We're glad that we sort of restarted this, and we're trying to make it a little bit more interactive and engaging, working with different companies and clients that we've had in the past. So I hope everyone gets to sort of get a sense of understanding some of these collaborative things that we do here at Jetro. As you can see, if the logo here, it says JBridge. JBridge is also another platform that we provide, especially when it comes to collaborations between Japanese companies and US companies, US startups or actually companies with advanced technology. So there's more to that. But to start off this session, I just have a couple housekeeping rules here. Please make sure your mics are off. And then there is a Q&A box that you can ask questions, and then depending on the time, we're happy to share all, if not some of them, and also we can have panelists answer these questions after if necessary. Also, there will be a survey at the end of this session, so if you can participate in that as well, we'd appreciate it very much. All right, so just to start off, we're very much. I'm glad to see that we have Nick Davis, CEO of Grid Market, and Adam Triol, who is the Director of Commercial Business Development at Regent, and talk about some of their experiences with working alongside Japanese companies and sort of best practices based on that. So that's today's session. We'll be around about an hour, and then certainly questions can come anytime, and I'm happy to answer them. But mostly, it's a discussion that we can get a little bit more engaged with. So to start off, we will give Nick and Adam a couple minutes, 10 minutes or so, to sort of explain their businesses, and then sort of dive right into discussions based on our experience working with US companies as well as the Japanese side for Nick and Adam. So to start, I guess, since Nick, you're next to me, I might as well just say go ahead, and if you can just sort of present your business, that'd be great.
Sure. And let me just make sure I'm sharing right here. Great to see everyone on Zoom here. My name is Nick Davis. I'm the CEO and founder of Grid Market. Before I get into exactly what we do, I do have to give a bit of a credit to Daiki and the Jetro team, who actually in the early stages of our company introduced us to Marubeni Group, which ended up becoming our Series A investor through that process. And I think that support from Jetro and that validation really helped us increase our partnerships and land partnerships, frankly, with Japanese companies. So there's a lot of value here. I know this has evolved into JBridge and other helpful opportunities, but between trips to Japan, where a lot of meetings were brokered for us through Jetro, to really the introduction and ultimate formal investment from one of our key and most appreciated partners in Marubeni, this did come through Jetro. So there's a lot of power here in the connections we make and the introductions and events and facilitations that happen through Jetro and JBridge. So just want to start with expressing that gratitude because we are where we are in large part because of those connections. So jumping right into the meat, what Grid Market effectively has is an AI enhancement platform to help automate the energy transition for big companies. And we also have a niche in the islands. So when a company comes and says, we have a renewable energy target, or a small island developing state like Tonga or Saint Martin come and similarly say we have to be 75% or 100% renewable energy by 2030, oftentimes the big exciting message becomes problematic when it gets cascaded down the chain to implementation. People don't know where to install assets. They don't know how to fund assets. And you know, are you doing solar and battery projects? Are you doing wind? Are you doing on-site microgrid projects with linear generators and fuel cells and taking part of the hydrogen economy? You know, the reality is it's a very complex market. And if you're a facilities operator, either an industrial manufacturer with hundreds of facilities or more of a commercial or retail provider with thousands of facilities, knowing where to start and knowing how to optimize across these technologies and categories is very, very challenging. And there are only a handful of Fortune 500s and companies in the world that really have a handle on all of this and can do it in-house. So we step in with an automation technology that starts by dipping into what's effectively a database of 750 million global properties that we've pre-assessed for distributed energy and microgrid potential and energy potential. So effectively, you know, instead of online dating, having people expressing what they do and what they want so they can be matched to other relationships and people. We've done this for every building in the world, so we can quickly look across a company's entire portfolio, or we can look across an entire nation's footprint, really optimize their energy spend and energy allocation, decide where to put large projects and where to put small projects on buildings and facilities, and then ultimately package this together into financeable opportunities that can go to the market, go to the capital markets, go to the technology markets, gain economies of scale, and ultimately help folks hit these renewable energy objectives. So a lot of the technologies we work with, people in renewable energy will obviously be familiar, things like solar PV and battery storage, EV charging and fleet management, fuel cells, energy efficiency, and IoT, all of these things that really contribute to both electrification and broader renewable energy goals. So a lot of data, a lot of analytics. We've got dozens of Fortune 500 customers that are exclusively leaning on us to really do this work on their behalf. We're warehousing all of their data, again, setting their energy agendas, and then hosting the procurements in order to match them with the best fit technologies and financing solutions in the market to achieve these goals. Many of these partners, of course, because of our Marubeni relationship, are Japanese industrial manufacturers, auto parts providers, others that really are in this space. But our typical customer base are, you know, data centers, logistics and warehouse companies, cold storage facilities, industrial manufacturers, steel manufacturers. But then again, we have this niche where we're exclusively running the energy transition for, as of now, 5 small island developing states across the Pacific and the Caribbean. So we'll talk about this a lot more as Daiki gives kind of directed questions that trend more towards the Japanese partnership side. But you know, we've had a long and fruitful partnership with Marubeni, who really found us around 2018 and did about a year and a half of diligence and proof of concepts before they made an investment. And since then, there's really been a great partnership. Wherein we're serving both their affiliates and customers and basically getting mutual support to first identify and then ultimately help implement and deploy and then track and measure the impacts of renewable energy projects across the US and frankly across other territories as well. So if you sum us up, we are AI and platform to accelerate renewable energy deployment and to really help the energy transition. And Marubeni is one of our top partners helping us get there, both through investment and through really commercial partnership that helps us generate new customers and new deals. And we'll talk more about that as we go. But now I'll pass it on to the really cool stuff because I saw a picture of a plane and a boat. So
thanks very much, Nick. And you know, it's always a pleasure, obviously working with Grid Markets since its inception, pretty much. So you know, it's been great, and looking forward to these discussions. All right, next we have Adam. from Regent.
Hi, guys. Very nice to meet you. Adam Triola with Regent Craft. My background is actually aircraft sales. So I started out at Raytheon Aircraft Company way back in the day. I was a professional pilot, moved over as an individual contributor based out of Southern California in Los Angeles, and then took over channel partner distribution for what was later called Textron Aviation in Southeast Asia. So I had a chance to spend 5 years based in Singapore, where I was responsible for aircraft sales in Japan. So that was my first orientation around the possibilities, opportunities, and challenges for anything aviation or related in Japan. So it came as a very, very nice surprise when just a few months out of Y Combinator, I discovered the founders of Regent. So Regent has been around about 3.5 years. It was founded in 2020, November of 2020. They came out of Y Combinator with an idea and $10 million of seed money. And since then, we raised $100 million and continue to grow the business in terms of sales, orders, and market reach. The whole idea behind Sea Gliders is it's really to solve the existing challenges around current modes of travel. So whether it's long lines at the airport, multiple stops on rail, sitting in traffic, uncomfortable ferry rides, we wanted to come up with a new way of moving people. And what we've created is called a Sea Glider. So it's an all-electric wing and ground effect seagoing vessel. It can carry passengers by the middle of the decade, but most importantly, it can do it leveraging existing dock infrastructure. Sea gliders use an aerodynamic principle called ground effect. So these are WIGs, or wing and ground vessels. You experience ground effect anytime you take off or land in an aircraft, right? So ground effect is the sandwiching of the air beneath the wing surface. By riding that cushion of air exclusively, we experience a reduction in aerodynamic drag. But most importantly, by never leaving ground effect, we actually can certify this vessel as a boat instead of as an airplane. So what you'll find is that this vessel will be certified under maritime law. While it looks like an aircraft, it is in fact a boat. I think I saw the hand up from Jetro. Did you have a question? Okay.
Oh, no, sorry.
Oh, no problem. So this vessel of ours actually operates at mast height, right? So sea gliders run 30 to 40 feet above peak wave at all times, where a traditional sailboat might be 50 feet, a large container ship might be 190 feet. In operating in this way, we certify ourselves as a boat, and we give our operators boat controls. And I'll walk you through that a little bit later. So we're really just the combination of existing forms of proven technology in a novel way. So the Akronoplans existed back in the 1960s. They were 300-ton weapons of war. They used very, very similar principles in that they would accelerate on the water until they achieved enough speed to break the suction of the water against the lifting surface and become airborne. We solved that problem using hydrofoils. So a hydrofoil is just a wing for the water. By leveraging the hydrofoil, we can lift the vessel up out of that heavy hydrodynamic drag. And then using advanced battery technology coupled with distributed propulsion, we actually blow the wing. So in blowing the wing, or evenly distributing these propellers and electric motors across the leading edge of the wing surface, in doing this, we can dramatically reduce the vessel's takeoff speed. So where a traditional seaplane aircraft would need 75 to 80 knots to become airborne on water, we can be airborne as low as 45 knots on water. So what that means is that we can get airborne much more quickly. We can improve the ride comfort for our passengers dramatically because they're no longer skipping along the water in the waves. And then we can get much more efficient once we're airborne to save energy and to go further distances. So our vessel floats, foils, and flies. When it's near the dock and in the no-wake zone, it floats on its hull. When it proceeds away from the dock and into a busy harbor, it rises up onto its hydrofoil. And then once clear of the busy harbor, it can come up onto its wing. But the difference between sea gliders and all of the wing and ground effect vessels of the past is really this center section, where traditional wigs had to be going very slow in float mode or very fast in fly mode. We have this ability to operate entirely on hydrofoils if we so choose. So using the hydrofoil, we can maneuver through busy harbors, we can transition up and down rivers, we can navigate congested spaces safely while still providing exceptional ride comfort for our passengers. Sea gliders are meant to be part of this new multimodal transportation system of the future. So where eVTOLs and EVs will carry people into the busy urban centers, sea gliders will run people up and down the coasts of these spaces. So where a traditional eVTOL carries one pilot, 3 or 4 passengers, about 50 statute miles total, our sea gliders can carry one boat captain, 12 passengers, over 200 statute miles on a single charge. So what this means is that any place you're currently operating turboprops along the coast today, you could be operating sea gliders instead. So we've done this huge worldwide TAM where we've looked at all the markets in which people are currently moving along the coasts using traditional modes of transportation, whether that's water, whether that's by vehicle, whether that's by air or rail. And we've looked at routes that are accessible today on current battery technology and assessed where these services can be provided. So as you can imagine, coastal communities, coastal operators are very interested in this, and that's one of the reasons we've been so successful in achieving traction in Japan. So up to this point, as I said, I'm VP of Commercial Business Development. I'm responsible for sales, ecosystems, and the data analytics team. The business is almost 100 employees to date. We're based out of Rhode Island. We've raised $100 million. I'll walk you through some of the different investors that we're working with. But this 600 plus Sea Glider backlog, this $9 billion in value, that's all commercial backlog. So that's the backlog that myself and my team have built in securing firm deposits from existing operators, right? So our 600 Sea Glider order is a mix of both firm and provisional orders. But where we're unique is that we're one of the few advanced air mobility companies out there that are actually taking firm deposits for delivery positions on Sea Gliders. So our firm order backlog goes well into 2029 at this point. That mix of orders really bifurcates between the maritime and aviation domains. On the maritime side, they see a chance to leverage existing dock infrastructure and workforce to provide a new kind of service to their customers. On the aviation side, they see an opportunity to plug into their existing networks, but at a dramatically lower operating cost than their current aircraft operate at. So where a Cessna Grand Caravan single engine turboprop on floats runs about $1,200 per flight hour to operate, we can carry the same number of passengers plus 1,000 pounds of additional payload for about $400 per flight hour. So we're orders of magnitude less expensive to operate, and that's one of the reasons we've been so successful in not only working with the United States Defense Department in securing a $5 million grant with the Marine Corps Warfighting Lab, but also in working with our venture partners to explore synergies in different markets. So I would just call out some of the large Japanese investors that have placed stakes in Regent. So Japan Airlines, of course, MOL has placed a recent investment, Yamato Transport as well, and HIS, the travel agency. In addition, we're in touch with a lot of the major players across Japan. You hear some very, very familiar names in those spaces, like Marubeni, like Mitsubishi, like Sumitomo, like Shinmeiwa. These are all companies that are doing, different projects around maritime mobility, and we're excited to be working with them on some future initiatives as well. I'm happy to take any questions on the vehicle. I'll throw it back to the moderators now as we discuss a little bit more about the synergies in Japan.
Awesome, great. No, thank you for that. It's kind of pretty gnarly to see one of those probably in the future, in the near future. And it's great to see that there's big backlog of this. All right. I guess I'll just go straight into sort of discussions on this, but given sort of we'll just pick it straight to from region side. So I think it's interesting. It's these. I'm pretty sure that partnering or even investments from these Japanese companies or Japanese capital side is it's sometimes time consuming. But I guess what's always intriguing when it comes to these big crafts is the regulatory side. And where do you see certainly how do you work around these regulations when it comes to preparing the Japanese market or working with these Japanese companies to fill in orders? And as I can imagine, when it comes to airplanes, for instance, it's very, very tough and strategic and accuracy and parts and things like that. So do you see where are some of the differences that you might see when working with like a Japan side versus like a US side, and like how do you prepare them or how do you get ready for it?
Sorry, happy to answer that question. So it's actually pretty straightforward. There's 30 years of precedent around wing and ground effect vessels falling under maritime law. So Regent is working with regulators around the world based on our order book backlog to prepare these different markets for sea glider operations. So using this IMO precedent, we've been working with the United States Coast Guard, for instance, here in the United States. They're preparing to process our design basis agreement. That design basis agreement pretty much outlines exactly how the sea glider will be built. That combined with construction survey and eventual sea trials will lead to certification and eventual operational approval in the United States for sea glider operators here. Overseas, we're working with Lloyd's Register and then the various regulatory bodies in each of these different countries. So Lloyd's Register is a classification society. They'll provide the WIG safety certificate. Using that WIG safety certificate, organizations like the Federal Maritime Authority, the Maritime Bureau under MLIT in Japan, and others will issue operational approvals for sea gliders. So there's actually a very defined process for sea glider certification. We actually have this, this long-standing definition under IMO that says Type A and Type B WIGs, or wing and ground effect vessels, fall under maritime law. So using that basis, we've found widespread consensus around the world in writing, actually, whether it's the U.S. Coast Guard or EASA, stating that these vessels will certify under maritime law as well. So we work with the critical players in Japan, such as MLIT Maritime Bureau. Class NK is on the horizon as well for engagement there. Lloyd's Register's Japan office. So all of this is with an eye toward ensuring Japanese operations as those deliveries commence for that space.
Got it. So I guess it's nice to have a seamless sort of operation or process as you go into other countries, and it's already there, so it makes it very easy to work around. Got it.
Yep.
Nick, you know, when you started doing these energy transitions, demand responses, things like that early on, I'm pretty sure, the Japanese side really didn't catch on to what exactly you were trying to do. But then, I feel like as times have passed by now, you're pretty much 6 years into working with Marubeni, for instance. Have you seen what are some of the changes in reaction to these new platforms in AI that you see that perhaps wouldn't normally come from like Japanese companies?
Yeah, we're in a perfect storm right now where the AI revolution and the energy transition has converged. So a lot of these concepts that we've been talking about for the better part of a decade have arrived. And we've been touching on regulatory issues and energy, and definitely energy in Japan in particular has really always faced a lot of regulatory pressure with pretty much monopolistic utilities that run the show. And one of the things that excited investors and Japanese partners about what we do is a lot of the work that we do from a machine learning and AI perspective is all about obviating the need to really get customer data or utility data, because we're reverse engineering it in our cloud and using our tools to really profile properties, rebuild the grid and create digital twins, and then ultimately have a basis and a foundation to move forward on critical energy transition projects when you might have utilities that are less interested in sharing that data and want to be a little more proprietary about it. So, a lot of our proof of concepts with Marubeni were around those proof points. Can we understand how a solar and battery asset is going to perform in the Tokyo market if the utility isn't willing to share information on that property? Can we use the learnings from places like New York or industrial facilities across the country and these portfolios to look to virtual power plants and other things that make it more economical to distribute the grid and install energy at the customer's site, charge vehicles at the customer's site, and do stuff that was really always predicted, but always just around the corner. The reality is this is all here now, and the Japanese utilities themselves, and in addition to the trading houses, have been really some of the most forward-thinking now investors in the space. You're seeing portfolio companies get propped up to do financing. You're seeing technology companies that are there, IPPs, investments, from companies like Tokyo Gas and things like Octopus Energy out of the UK, which is a very forward-thinking, kind of AI for utility transformation company that's growing rapidly. So, there was let's just say a very long upfront education process as we kind of took the show on the road and started to explain to folks the value of these assets. We've probably given Japanese companies, no fewer than 20 Japanese companies and delegations have visited us on tours of Marcus Garvey Village, for instance, which was our project out in Brownsville, Brooklyn, where we took 6 city blocks off grid with a combination of solar panels, fuel cells, and the first permitted lithium-ion battery project in the city. There was a very long educational process, but everyone seems to get it now, and there's really a major convergence and a willingness to use the technologies of the day, like AI and ML, to accelerate this energy transition further. And there's a lot of buy-in around energy transition too. So it's an exciting time, and the education process has really accelerated, and it's less of a time-consuming aspect of doing business now because most people now know about it.
Yeah, I wanted to sort of you kind of answered my next sort of question to that. I mean, what was it like to make that, I guess, integrate your product into these, for instance, legacy models that Japanese corporates might have had, or the datas that they might have had, the differences? Were there anything interesting, or maybe it's like a wall or a challenge that you've kind of had to leap over to learn more about that, and then has it been easier moving forward?
Yeah, at the end from a technology perspective, these are all technologies that are proven. They can be insured and warranted. It's not necessarily even innovative tech at this point. The optimization of these technologies are what's innovative. The most kind of painstaking process is bureaucratic approvals to get things installed, to get folks to contract, to really move through the requisite gates and hurdles in a manner that allows stakeholders and the board, frankly, that's typically mandating sustainability goals, to actually achieve these goals. So from our perspective, what's been unique about our experience and platform is we've got a very transparent data model. It's available to everyone at a company when we do this work. And that's the power of being able to do a lot with a little by leveraging AI. So, our system speaks transparently to a CFO or to a sustainability officer or to a chief engineer or to a chief procurement officer. And all the engineers up and down the chain, they can all look at a single source of truth. We still have legacy speed challenges. People ultimately do the projects, but what then conflicts with a goal of of achieving an objective in a couple of years, the tension that you feel and that you hit is some of the legacy approval processes that frankly exist in US companies, but are particularly apparent in Japanese companies where, everyone up and down the chain has to approve before an investment is made. Just as kind of an example, even from our experience, we received a fairly modest investment by the scale of a huge Japanese trading house, but by the time our approvals were done and the investment was secured, I would say the CEOs and group leaders of every single division had to sign off on the investment, and every person underneath them had to do a review. So that's why things take a long time. That's good because, typically if you're partnering with folks that think in long cycles, then you have the time to ramp up and really start to control a market. And that's been a great benefit because once you're partnered for life. And that's something that we've really appreciated. But things have to accelerate because in the US in particular, we've got an aging grid. Power has to continue to distribute. People really are committed to achieving sustainability objectives. So the energy transition is here. It's moving too slowly, but it's definitely moving, and that movement's accelerating. And we're happy to play a part in that. In the past, it could take 2 years to permit and approve a project. We're seeing projects installed start to finish in a month. Depends where you are, but things are definitely accelerating, and the process of education is reducing significantly.
I guess similar question to Adam as well. I mean, when it comes to selling these products to Japan and sort of trying to make them understand, sort of that future of what might be and the differences compared to, say, flying a helicopter from one city to one city or, across the prefectures. I mean, is there like a challenge or similar question to what I asked Nick?
I think for Regent, our experience has been in other parts of the world, they want to place investments in platforms and then understand how those platforms will be used in their markets. Whereas in Japan, my experience has been that they want to place investments in businesses and then explore, learn everything they can about those businesses and then explore the ways in which they can leverage those businesses to be complementary to or adjacent to their existing lines of service. So I would echo everything Nick shared. I love working with our Japanese partners because they're very methodical, they're very deliberate, they're very purposeful in the ways they move. But they're also amazing partners. They're looking at these markets, and anyone who's ever done business in Japan recognizes that Japan is a unique space. It has its own cultural nuance and clientele, and it's important to have the right people there helping Western companies understand how to adapt their products and service offerings to be successful in that space. So we've been very, very grateful to JAL and Yamato and HIS and MOL because they've really helped us understand the ways in which we can use these maritime products to create better outcomes for people in these different prefectures. And what we know is that the Japanese population is experiencing some contraction, right? So we want to maintain services to the population centers that have existed across this diverse set of islands, and maintain services, maintain access, and availability to transportation. So sea gliders have the ability to continue to maintain that connectivity while not dramatically increasing costs for service frequency or for infrastructure.
Did the Japan side sort of inquire you first, or did you guys sort of go after them?
We went after them. Yeah, we actually, yeah, we've spent a lot of time. Part of it too, we've been talking to Japan from the earliest days of this business. And one of the ways that we began, those discussions and those talks was really by virtue of some of the work we were doing in Hawaii. So one of our earliest investors was Hawaiian Airlines, and that investment and the connections to Hawaii, really sort of supercharged our talks with Japan, because obviously there's a huge cultural connection across Hawaii and the Japanese population. So it began there with JAL Innovation Lab and sort of just took off. But I can't say enough good things about the partnerships and the ways we've been received. We've done several trips, me and my previous career, and then we were there for several weeks earlier this year, and it's just wonderful opportunities to work and expand in that market.
Awesome. And then I guess to both of you, when it comes to when you started working with these Japanese corporations or companies, and you sort of had to, I'm pretty sure, there are very much cultural differences, as you mentioned, there's differences in how you prepare the work. And I guess from a team standpoint, were there any changes or things you had to do to like form a specific team for a Japanese corp? Like, did you have to, now I'm not going to say like go out of your way, but because, because of these cultural language differences, did you have to sort of like build a separate team catering to a Japanese corporate?
We had kind of a bit of an inverse experience where we had the great fortune of having our investor form up teams to service and assist us. So we didn't have to change much about our business other than really accepting and supporting what became an incredible business development and analytics team that we inherited from our very generous investors. They really put their engine behind this project, from landing customers to learning the markets and speaking to those customers, being a tip of the spear, learning our platform and tooling so they could do preliminary conversations or have preliminary conversations themselves first before bringing in any support or technicians on our end or on the project management side. So we really had that experience where they formed and rallied around our particular need and our company, and mobilized, frankly, various departments and educated various departments to bring our solution across their group companies and the customer base of those group companies. So it was pretty amazing to watch how everyone fell into place to really support the business. Again, it's one of those things where the onboarding and education process takes time to get there and to really push information across such a big organization. But that time pays off in the support that you get and the knowledge base that's acquired by the people supporting you. And that's been a very, very unique experience, and one that you don't get if you get a venture capital investment just purely in the US or a private equity investment from a US provider. They say that they really lean in and become experts in your business. I've never seen that to the degree that we see it with Japanese companies.
Adam?
Yeah, I would say the same thing. The Japanese companies that we have worked with for the most part have dedicated venture arms or venture entities that they work with, many of which have offices in Silicon Valley. Many times the venture representatives that they collaborate with manage large funds that are dedicated for innovation purposes. So in our experience, while we've had exposure to and engaged with the mothership companies, if you will, the venture side of these businesses are they're sort of this nice amalgamation of Japanese culture and Western business practices, and they're sort of helping to bridge any of those potential gaps that you might have. So I think it's important, anytime you're working with any other nation, to have the right kind of people, in the space that are sensitive to the cultural nuances and process. Obviously, the way, a Westerner might go about doing something is going to be different than the way someone in Japan might go about doing it, but you're both trying to share and achieve the same goals. So I think you've got to have people that are, sensitive to the differences in process. But in general, I think we've been very, very fortunate that we haven't needed to stand up a separate team of any kind. So we've been very, very streamlined in that way.
Got it. And then sort of more on an interesting question that just sort of popped into my head, but especially for US companies that are looking to partner with future Japanese clients, and when it comes to like failed approaches. So, you guys are fortunate to work with the Marbinis or the Jals or the mega companies, but I'm pretty sure there were times where some of these Japanese companies backed off, maybe not, but you're perhaps maybe on your experience of like, okay, maybe this company didn't work out, but oftentimes culturally, Japanese companies take time to make final decisions, and you're sort of sit back waiting until, this decision's been made. But then when it doesn't go through, what your experience, I guess, based on that, if you have any, of course, but how do you take that lesson and sort of take it to the next company, or for more of an advice, but even if it took that long, maybe you took that as a advantage for your next company that you've approached?
From kind of a capital raise perspective, if that's kind of the form of partnership one's looking at, I think timelines probably are accelerated. Adam mentioned the venture arms of Japanese companies that are here in the US, and I think they're probably propped up that way to be more nimble. If it goes back to the mothership in Japan, that's when things are a little bit slower. So if you're, what we've seen a lot from other Japanese companies is, hey, this sort of investment or capitalization is in our thesis for next year. Sorry, we're not going to meet your round. So if you're a young startup that absolutely needs cash, it's going to be difficult to be working with the corporate arm of a Japanese company, wherein those approvals have to come from Tokyo, because you might have a thesis mismatch where maybe there's a commitment in 2025 to invest in an EV company, and that's what they're going to do. They're going to find an EV company and invest in that EV company. But if you're falling just outside of that window and you're desperate for that cash because you're going round to round to round, you will more than likely miss your target if you're relying on a Japanese company to fill that round. On the other hand, if you have a more patient need, and want to kind of build a more direct partnership and thesis with a full integration, and have a big machine behind you with an investment, there's probably no better partner in the world. And so I think there's probably some evolution to be done on both sides of the equation, where young companies who really want that kind of partnership probably need to leave enough room for those more kind of methodically moving companies. On the other hand, Japanese companies on the corporate side, particularly in Japan, where there aren't these investment arms propped up, are probably going to have to become more nimble and responsive to allocating capital for a market that needs it quicker, and for markets that evolve much faster because of the technologies of the day. Just one kind of example I'll point out is there's a tremendous opportunity on the infrastructure side for Japanese companies to come in and really buy up a tremendous number of renewable energy infrastructure assets and projects at different stages. That's the reality of having a prime rate in Japan that's, I think, as of June, like 0.5%, as opposed to a US prime rate that's 4 to 5%. It means that debt rates are so low that project providers, if you're willing to play in this space, are going to come to you every single time. And all you have to do is have fewer points on that debt. And every project is really the lifeblood of infrastructure projects is pumping up returns to make it financeable and to make the equity risk at the front end of the project worthwhile. So, in a world where finance is really the lifeblood of propping up these projects, it shouldn't matter if your thesis is for 2 years from now or 3 years from now. There's an opportunity now to come in and scoop up a tremendous amount of infrastructure. So, what I'm surprised to see is not as many, Japanese financial institutions and companies that can work with organizations like JICA or the Japanese Development Bank and others, really taking advantage of all of this much cheaper cash that's out there and could be deployed to really dominate markets where interest rates are high. That's just one example, and there are many others. But there's really an opportunity now, and I just, we're always willing to talk about those opportunities, but everyone needs to be poised to seize them.
Gotcha on that. Definitely opportunities right now. Adam, I guess on your end.
Yeah, no, I think that was very, very well put. I think that at the end of the day, the slow and steady is the nature of both investing and the relationships with our corporate partners in Japan. I think they take their time. They really seek to understand and build on that knowledge base in preparation for long-term operations and partnerships. So, if to Nick's point, anyone who is a week from closing a round and planning on circling up in Japan, I don't know that that's the best advice I would give anybody for closing out their round. But anybody who is building, a 100-year business that is going to evolve with critical partners in critical parts of the world, I can't think of a better market to spend time than in Japan, because when you work with this group of professionals and when you think about the Japanese market and how much potential it has. This is a great place to do business, and these companies are going to be with you through the good times and the tough times, helping you find solutions. So, but I love what Nick talked about in terms of the Japanese banks. We spent a decent amount of time actually engaging the Japanese banks, and we would love to see some clever opportunities there for venture debt or debt financing, or just all the different ways in which you can leverage debt to really supercharge markets. And we see that in some of these other markets that we're working in, specifically in the United States, but other parts as well. And to Nick's point, there's some real opportunities there to use the banks across Japan to sort of move the growth needle on these new businesses. So always interested in having those conversations down the road too.
So if any of the Japanese banks are listening on that one, for sure. Another interesting question that through experience. So oftentimes, and maybe depending on how long you work with a Japanese corporation, even and perhaps this is more of an advice from you guys to these Japanese companies, but there's oftentimes quick transitions in management in Japan. So every 2 or 3 years, somebody leaves, new guy comes in. Nick, you've probably experienced this one. But yeah, any advice to the Japan side on how can you sort of efficiently make these transitions should there be oftentimes management changes, especially the expats?
Yeah, we've had some of those transitions that have hurt. On the other hand, what I can say is when those transitions, when those personnel shakeups happen on the Japanese side, because there's such a depth of institutional knowledge about your business when they make the investment, they always hurt less than, if a US partner does it. We have some big conglomerate US partners who they switch out a whole team, and everyone you've just done a year of work with is basically turned to dust, and there's no institutional knowledge, and you do a complete re-education. It wastes a ton of time. So I think every big company goes through this, but as long as the institutional knowledge is there, and that's what you pay for on the front end, is that institutional knowledge in the book, and really, it helps. Do I wish that maybe the rotations were a little longer than 2 years sometimes? Sure, right? Let's make them 4 years. If someone's in place longer, or 5, but who knows? But that's not my business to kind of change the cultural rotations of large organizations. But I got to say, we've been hit less hard from the Japanese transitions, again, because of that institutional knowledge. And just one quick funny story, that institutional knowledge on the front end. I remember during our investment process, after we felt like we had educated truly everyone at every department at the company, in order to clarify one point with us, our investor made one of their employees fly all the way from Tokyo to deliver a 20-minute presentation, have us sign a document affirming that we understood what he was saying, that could then get passed to the rest of the team. And then they immediately put him on a plane back. So he was on the ground for 45 minutes to do this, and then he went back, which is, but this is someone who, frankly, we hadn't spent much time with, and he had to become a complete expert in the business on the plane, and worked with us then for a couple of years after. But there are dozens of people like that throughout the company, which is really unique. But luckily, people don't have to get on planes as much like that anymore. So.
Right.
As it relates to the rotation, it's interesting. We see a lot of those types of rotations in the U.S. military, and I am not a military veteran. I have profound respect for anyone who has served, but I think that rotational process is actually very healthy in many ways for a business. It provides people exposure that they otherwise would not have received. It helps reduce, the whole idea behind groupthink, and this is the way we've always done it, so we'll continue to do it this way. So there's absolutely always a transition period and a reset that occurs with those 2 and 3 year rotations. I'm not going to say that they're painless, but I would say they're not an obstruction either. There's always a period of time where, everybody's kind of getting reacquainted and getting to know one another. There's always a period of time where, you feel like you're answering some questions that have been asked before. But I'm always incredibly impressed with how quickly the new teams spool up and start leaving their mark. They each one of the advantages you have of rotating on a 2 to 3 year basis is each fresh group of people wants to move the ball downfield. So when they come in, they look at it with a new set of eyes and they say, okay, what are our ways to leave a mark so that when we wrap up our tenure in this space, we can show some real progress. So we've been grateful. And again, I think that 3 year rotation is something that it all fits under the cultural nuance umbrella. If you're prepared to work with people who don't do things exactly the way you do and learn from those processes as well, because I think Westerners sometimes get caught in this trap that, the way we do things is the best way to do things. And in fact, there's a lot of really good knowledge that comes from adapting other cultures, processes, and ways of doing business. So we've benefited from all of that.
Any advices on sort of work, and that's very intriguing how you mentioned it, but advice on obviously working with US company. Well, I guess you kind of did answer that one, so I'll actually kind of skip that. Are there Andrew, are there any Q&A questions coming in online or not yet?
No, not as of right now.
Okay. I mean, we have like about five minutes or so. All right, in that 5 minutes, you know what? If what would be like what would be your wish list in terms of, I would say, post COVID, a lot of transitions in Japan has happened, a lot of digital, transitions happened throughout. I guess, your sort of like wish list in terms of like what to better work with you guys, how can Japan how can your clients or future potential company partnerships, collaborations, like what can we do better to sort of enhance more, possible relationships with you guys or US companies? It's a broad question. It's just popped in.
Yeah, I think more of these sessions, I think maybe some, I think, direct introductions are always helpful too, if wherein you kind of see synergistic elements. And I know JBridge is really, we're putting enough information in there that I am, it's a perfect outcome to really start doing additional pairing. We've benefited tremendously from matchmaking that Jetro has already done on our behalf. So more is always what we'd say. And I think, you guys have ideas as well based on the companies that you're talking to on the Japanese side, and also startups in Japan that are looking for fertile ground and opportunity in the US market. So I think provided we continue to have a great exchange and continue to do more of it, the sky's really the limit. So I think just more of the same, more intros, more webinars, more opportunities to learn. Who knows, maybe host some cocktail hours in Tokyo and here, and do some kind of mutual exchanges as well with all the companies that that could be relevant and be a part of it. But there's really there's a great startup community out there. There's a great community of startups that are maturing into companies that are out there. There's well, I shouldn't say startups that are maturing into more mature businesses out there. That there are and there are a lot of strategics and a lot of big corporates that really want to draft on those new ideas, fund those new ideas, acquire those new ideas in certain cases. But we all have to work together to really deliver sustainability goals, to deliver the energy and transportation transition. It's a huge undertaking. It's a many trillion-dollar undertaking. It's global. So really, the more connections that can be fostered, the absolute better we'll all do.
I'm just going to add to that. So also, as far as your industry in the US, the opportunities for the Japanese companies to come in, and I know you mentioned, there are a lot happening right now, but, I guess a message out to, these participants of like, what can be offered in the US and the opportunities for them to be in your industry.
Yeah, there are 1,600 or so utility companies in the US that are all going through these challenges. There are 100 million or more properties and facilities. There's massive reindustrialization going on. You have huge data centers going up. You have power needs that really haven't spiked like this since the beginning of electricity. From a growth percentage perspective, it's really amazing. It's an all-at-once transition across a lot of different avenues, and there is no shortage of need for technologies. There's no shortage of need for financial partnerships, for capitalization. So if you're a startup in Japan offering efficiency and Internet of Things tech or AI tech or energy tech, anything that adds value to the transition, you should come here and sell your wares. If you are a Japanese financial services provider, which pretty much every trading house kind of also is, you should be looking here. If you're a Japanese bank, you should be looking here. There's so much fertile ground and opportunity, and really opportunity to frankly undercut and offer better deals to the market by being a part of it. So, this is a global challenge. The US right now is incredibly fertile ground, given all the incentives and the need out there and the load growth. So, let's work globally, but right now there's a real opportunity here.
Well, Adam?
Yep, I would agree with all of that. I think that to the extent this organization can play matchmaker and continue to put budding organizations in touch with Japanese corporations that are looking to invest in new types of businesses and technology, I think that's a very good thing. I think that Japan and Japanese corporations in general have already started taking those steps where they're sort of separating out their innovation units and they're allowing them some level of autonomy to kind of go out there and find these new opportunities and operate with a pool of funds that doesn't necessarily fall under the same structure, analysis, and approval process that the big corporate funds would typically fall under. I think to Nick's point, in the startup world and in the venture world, it's all about how nimble can you be and how quickly can you react and provide the necessary resources within a timely fashion to businesses that have the best opportunities to succeed. And in that, success cycle, how many of those corporations can you identify quickly, invest at valuations that are still attractive, but also route the benefits of those investments back to Topco, right? So, really, there's all these amazing businesses around the world, like Grid Market, like Regent, where we're building this technology here in the United States, but the opportunities and potential benefits for all archipelago nations, nations like Japan, are just immense. And when you start thinking about the ways that you can contribute to workforce development and reducing the cost of housing by increasing access, providing very low cost means of transportation, by maybe even building these in some of these markets for these markets someday. Getting in early, identifying the opportunities, and then placing bets that benefit both the Japanese community and the Japanese corporations that make the bets. It's all about increasing that engagement. So we feel very, very good about the steps that are being taken. We can always, as Nick said, we're always looking for new ways to increase connectivity with Japanese businesses and to continue to share the gospel and the benefits of these startups. So we appreciate the things you're doing today and look forward to continuing that in the future.
Thank you very much. Well, it was an hour. I thought it flew by for me. I'd still have plenty more questions to go through, but I really appreciate this. This is sort of a first sort of time doing this type of engagement on a Jetro sort of platform, a little bit intimate, engaging discussions and sessions. So, and I'm very much excited to do more of these in the future as well. But we appreciate the fact that you guys both are, part of our programs, and we certainly love to continue and help and provide these sort of opportunities. I'm very much excited to see a Viceroy floating somewhere one of these days. It's, super, super exciting. And then for Nick and Grid Market, I mean, you guys continue to do great things. Your experience with a young, as a young startup, and now 8-9 years into working with a Japanese corp is it's important. So very much appreciate all that. But yeah, no, thanks a lot. Again, you have our team here whenever, you're very much welcome to contact us whenever. To the participants, there will be sort of a survey right after this. So please feel free to fill them out. And then, any sort of comments to make this sort of session better, or this series better, I'm sorry. Well, I'm happy to take that. So, but thank you very much. Appreciate it. Nick, Adam, thank you so much for your time. Very much. I hope, I don't know, Adam, you're in Vegas. Are you?
No, I'm actually in Miami Beach.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I live in Miami. But right now, I spent about half the month up in Rhode Island with our headquarters here. So I'm in Rhode Island today. So.
Oh, nice. Well, I hope stay cool. I guess New York is very hot, Nick. I know, I'm pretty sure you're boiling in your room right now.
Yeah, we're at 83.
Yeah, 83. All right. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for participating.
Have a great day.
Take care.